Welcome to another DCS Mission Editor tutorial. This is a follow-on from my previous video in which I described how to make your wingman actually do things for you as opposed to simply go home or get shot down. So if you haven't seen that, you should probably take a look at that video as well. This video is very much an extension to that, and we are going to cover contextual radio menus. I'll start by showing what we mean by contextual menus, then we will cover how to create them, and finally we'll show them in action during the mission. So, let's go. Here we are, and the first thing you can see is that we've created an 8-ship. If you followed my last video, you will know that we are no longer limited to a 4-ship. This is comprised of myself as flight leader. Then we have the flight wingman in Royal Navy 801 Squadron colours. Our element leader and his wingman are both in RAF winter camouflage. And we have the second flight of 4 all in US Marines colours. I've done this so when we fly the game later on, hopefully we can easily identify who's doing what. I'm now going to bring up the radio menu and we will go straight into Other, and here we can see that I've created 4 options, one for each of the 3 groups I've just described so I can control each group individually, and also a group to control them all. Pressing F1 takes us to the wingman option, and here we can see the primary tasks that I've defined. F1 takes us to another submenu which has some less critical tasks defined. F2 sets the group to attack a primary target which I have defined in the editor. F3 does the same for a secondary target which I have also defined. F4 is Seed Patrol. So what this will do is get the group to automatically patrol looking for defense threats, and will automatically engage as soon as something is detected. This is using an AI task push. F5 I have called Seed Force and is similar to the previous option but uses an AI task set. This is to overcome a weakness in the AI logic whereby if you have already set certain tasks, the patrol option using AI task push will not work. Conversely, if you were to select F5 with nothing detected, the AI would probably fly off and leave formation. F6 is Search and Destroy Armour, and this sets the AI to be on the prowl for non-defined targets of opportunity. So if the AI detects targets which meet the criteria I have set, they will automatically engage without further input. If we press F1 to go into the submenu, we have 3 options. We have Orbit, if we want our wingmen to hold in a pattern. Return to base, and finally rejoin formation. If we press F11 and then once again, we can now go into the menu for the element, and again we can go back and then look at the flight menu. As you can see, this is identical to the wingman menu. And finally the all menu, which I haven't fully populated. There are 2 ways to create the menu system. The first method, which I just demonstrated, is using scripting. but don't let that put you off at all, as I've created a utility to do all of the hard work for you. The second method is done entirely in the mission editor and is fine for simple one-tier menus, but not so good for more complicated menus, especially if you want submenus, because after each selection you need to go back into the radio menu to access the submenu that you might have selected. So let's take a look at the editor. I've created a mission with the 8 aircraft that you saw a moment ago. Each group has the same set of default actions and also the same set of triggered actions which match what we saw on the menus earlier, noting that there is only one seed option. I'm not going to go through all of these actions in detail, as I have already covered that in my earlier video on how to improve your wingman. But I will put a link to that video in the description if you want to follow that, and I will also upload the mission file to the DCS site under user files single missions. Over here we have our primary target, which is some artillery, which is defended by a shilka. And we also have a secondary target, which is a mixture of armoured vehicles, some trucks, and that's also defended by a shilka. And finally, we have a pair of hidden units, one being a platoon of tanks and the other being an SA-6 battery. So let's pretend that we haven't seen those. Okay, I think it's now time to look at the triggers. We're not interested in these ones in white. These are just standard mission triggers and are not part of the menu system. So let's start back towards the top. This in pink is the radio menu builder. It's set to trigger automatically at mission start and run a single script. And this is the script that I have created. It probably looks a little bit daunting at first, but don't panic if you cannot script, as if I'm honest, nor can I. But I have managed to butcher the commands that I needed. Luckily, I have created this Excel spreadsheet which will do all of the hard work for you and will be included in the mission file. If we look at the top section, that is where we create the menu framework. Column A is simply a unique ID, so I have M1 onwards. Column B, we simply add the names of the fields you want creating, starting with the route items. So here we have wingman, element, flight, and all. But for a normal 4-ship, you would just have wingman and element. And then we have 3 instances of other actions, which will be submenus for wingman, element, and flight. And finally, we have the submenu name. Now for the 4 entries in route, that has to be route. And for the 3 submenus, the entry should match the menu ID to which it belongs. As I mentioned, the all section only had a single entry and no subgroups. So let's do that now. Simply copy the entire row, not just the visible text, and paste it into the row below. Change the ID, the menu name if you wish, and the submenu name, and that's it. As you can see, the script is automatically generated. The second section is almost as simple, and this builds the commands to be executed whenever we make a selection from the radio menu. So if we want our wingman to attack the primary target, flag 1 is given a value of 1. Or if we want the second element to return to base, flag 6 is given a value of 2. And later on in the editor, we will assign tasks to those flags. Whilst it's easy enough to chop and change these, you probably want to set out on paper roughly what you have in mind first to stop mistakes creeping in. I had planned several tasks, which will be the same for all groups, and I wanted non-critical tasks as subgroups. It's probably easiest then to start in column B, and in there I have listed all of the actions that I wanted. I've done these sub-menu options at the end, but it really doesn't matter, but you should try and keep some form of order. As you can see, all of the entries are copied multiple times, as I wanted the same options for all groups. The tasks don't have to be the same. If you wish, you could have some units with dedicated roles. Maybe even setting up a tanker, which is maybe 100 miles away by default, and setting it to divert to a different location. Probably so that it's in range for you to shoot it down. Once that's complete, we then need to add the menu ID to which menu it belongs. So if we refer back up to the menu builder, if we want a rejoin option as a submenu for the flight, we set it as M7. Finally, you need to assign a flag number and a value. You don't need to use these flag numbers and values, you can use whatever you wish. If we want to add another command, like before, we simply copy a line, insert it, enter your command name, the menu ID, and give it a flag and value. You can now copy all of that output and simply paste it into the mission editor. And that's it, the radio menu will now be created, but of course there aren't any tasks assigned yet, so let's take a look at those now. I'm not going to run through each and every task, as it's up to you what task you actually want, and I haven't actually tested that every single one works. Besides, I've covered this in my earlier video. As you can see, each one is a switched condition. I've given it a name so I know what the trigger does, and I have color coded them by group. There is a single condition for each, and that maps to what we created in Excel. So flag 1 with a value of 1 for the primary target for wingman, and so on. The actions all have 2 entries with 1 exception, and these are to reset the flag back to a 0 value, and the second maps to a triggered action that we assign to the aircraft. In my mission, all of these are either an AI task set or an AI task push, but again, you might want to add other commands such as audio files. There are 2 entries for seed. One is a task push and one is a task set. The behavior of these 2 actions depends on what task you are setting and what task is currently assigned. All of the other triggers follow the same pattern. The exception is the entry for all primary. Here I have set the action to apply to all 3 groups. And that's it, setup complete. So let's now look at doing something fairly similar but using the mission editor itself. I'm going to keep this brief as the scripting method is far easier and less prone to errors and is also easier to troubleshoot. But if you insist on using the editor, this will show you how. But I'm only going to cover the bare bones. At the top here we have a menu initialization trigger. That happens just after startup and sets flag 1 to a value of 1. And that in turn activates the build main menu trigger. As you can see, this trigger is building the root menu, in which I have just 2 entries. Wingman with flag 2 and a value of 1, and element with flag 3 and a value of 1. These flags and values will create one of the 2 following menus. So let's just look at the Wingman Builder menu. As expected, the condition is that flag 2 has a value of 1, and we have 5 actions. The first of these sets flag 1 to a value of 0. This is so we can repeat the switch condition for the main menu. These next 2 items remove the Wingman and element items we have just created. And these next 2 actions are actual functions that we want our Wingman to do. So again, I've just got 2 entries. One is to attack the primary target and the second to go on seed patrol. I've given them both the flag 2 and the attack primary I've given a value of 2 and the seed patrol a value of 3. We can add any additional radio items as we see fit, such as return to base, by doing another radio item add, selecting the flag ID and assigning the next value. And finally, we have this entry which sets flag 2 to a value of 0. This will be used to move back 1 step in the menu, which will be back to root. And this is that trigger. As you can see, the condition is a flag 2 with a value of 0. And the action that sets flag 1 to a value of 1, which is the trigger to build a main menu. And the next 3 items simply remove the 3 items we had in the Wingman menu. These next 2 items are identical to the above, but relate to the element rather than the Wingman. So the values are the same, but it applies to flag 3. And finally, we have these 4 in green, which are the actual action triggers. So as you can see, if we look at the first of these, Wingman Attack Primary, that is triggered when flag 2 has a value of 2 from the menu builder we saw earlier, and the action is any action we see fit. I've just done a message to all, but in a real mission you would do an AI task push or an AI task set, as we saw in the previous part of the video. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but I will include this mission in the download along with the original mission and the scripts, so you can play around with it if you wish. But for now, I'm going to fly the original mission with the script to show the full menu in action. If you don't want to tag along but have learned anything, then please do hit like and subscribe. So we're back aboard and en route to our target. I'm going to get my Wingman to scout for random ground targets which might be a threat. So we're going to hit F10 from the radio menu, and then F1, and then F6 to select Search and Destroy Armor. Now we're going to get our second element to search for defense targets, so that's F2 and then F4 for seed patrol. And finally we're going to get the second flight to attack the primary target, so that's F3 and then F2 to attack primary. As we expect, the second flight has immediately jumped into action, as that option was an AI task set and there's a defined target. My wingman and the second element have both stayed in formation, as both are set with an AI task push and are set to search in a zone, and so have no defined targets. However, as soon as either group detect a target that they've been asked to attack, they will automatically engage without any further input from me. We're still quite some distance out, so let's jump forward a little bit. We have mud at 12 o'clock. And the second element is peeling off to engage without any further interaction from me. The wingman is still with me, but we should be expecting him to break away shortly as well. It looks like our wingman has indeed now detected a target, so has also broken away to engage. It looks like the Iranian artillery is bombarding the runway. That's the element lead firing a sidearm. And the wingman firing a Maverick. There goes a Maverick and a second from the wingman. And another one. This is the SA6 site, and in the background you can see the column of tanks. That's the SA6 straight flush destroyed. In the background you can see that the armour has taken some hits. And the SA6 site has been completely eliminated. This is the leader of the second flight running in. And that's him firing on the artillery. and these guys are about to have a very bad day. My element has some mavericks left, so I'm going to get them to attack the secondary target. And immediately he sprung into action. And that's 4 hits on the secondary target as well. I'm now calling my wingman, the element and flight to all rejoin formation. My wingman is now back with me, and so I'm now going to get him to return to base. And there he goes. That was a remarkably successful mission, with the AI taking out an SA-6 site with a radar and 2 launchers, 2 Shilkas, 8 152mm guns, 3 T-55s and 4 armoured personnel carriers. But more importantly, that's precisely what I tasked them to do. So, with these contextual menus and with the improved wingmen from my previous video, we can have our flight and indeed other flights coming together to provide a far more flexible and powerful single player experience. I think these combined are a real game changer. Okay, I'm off to collect some JDAMs, but I can't remember if I'm supposed to be going to hangar 34 or 35. My crew chief's going to be pissed at me again.